Hey, it's Katie from the Bittersweet Life. If you've ever found yourself smiling while you listen to our stories from Rome, or even tearing up during an interview that hits close to home, maybe you've paused to rethink what it means to live boldly or differently or abroad. If any of these are true, then you already know that this show matters to you. But here's the thing. This show doesn't happen by magic. The Bittersweet Life is powered by listeners just like you. We don't have a big production house behind us. All we have is passion, experience, and a deep love of telling stories and having conversations that resonate. And right now we need your support. Just a few dollars a month, the cost of a cappuccino, can help us keep the episodes coming. To give you more honesty, more adventurous thinking, more connection across the world. So if the Bittersweet Life has ever made you feel seen, or helped you dream, or even kept you company on a long walk or a long flight, join us, support us. Because conversations like these don't happen everywhere, and they only exist if you believe that they should. thebittersweetlife.net/support, or find links to donate in the show notes. Welcome to Rome. This is The Bittersweet Life with Katie Sewell and Tiffany Parks. Hello, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katie Sewell.
I'm Tiffany Parks.
Tiffany in Rome, Katie in Seattle. And if you have not yet listened to last week's show with our guest, Jennie Spohr, who moved to Ireland with her entire family, including her ex-husband, to start a different kind of life and to leave the United States partly for political reasons, I highly suggest that you go back and listen to the episode first, because we are going to be doing some commentary on that episode in this episode. So go back to the last episode, last Monday, and you'll be all set. All right, Tiffany, I'm going to let you lead off on what you think we should talk about.
Well, I just thought it was so fascinating, the whole premise of her story, even before, because you told me about it, even before I heard the interview. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that's just crazy. Both the fact that someone we know, well, actually, I don't technically know her, but I feel like I do now. But like, someone is quote unquote, because we can talk about whether she's actually fleeing, but fleeing, the United States for political reasons. One is just like, you hear so many people talk about it, but to meet someone who's actually doing it is kind of crazy. And secondly, the whole plot twist that her ex-husband is coming with her, I just think is so fascinating. And so I was very interested to listen to the episode, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And so, yes, like you said, please go back and listen to that first, because this episode will not make that much sense if you haven't heard that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I thought there were a lot of things that she said that were very interesting to me. One thing that made me sort of sit up was she said, I'm a historical fiction writer. I know history. I think she might have also been a history major. I can't remember if she said she was a history major in college, but I am a history lover myself. And I do feel like sometimes if you know your history, you are more likely to be, maybe you're less likely because maybe you have the long view, but I think you're more likely to take things seriously that seem totally outrageous in our times, and feel like that'll never happen, and you're like, well, it happened in such a date and such a time, and it's happened here and it happened there and it happened over here. So it actually could very likely happen, and I thought that was an interesting point that she made, that she's more worried as somebody who is familiar with history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was actually going to ask you that question because, you're so well versed in Roman history. And given that fact, you must see some repeating patterns in what happens. Certainly there are repeating patterns in the, how many times has Rome been sacked type of repeating patterns, but also ebbs and flows of creativity, certainly, ebbs and flows of prosperity. I don't know. Was there anything that reminded you of?
sorry, anything that like anything that
Like like a
today's
repeating pattern you've seen,
like something that's happening today in our world that I feel like I've
well, yeah, however you want to take it, or like repeating patterns you see in Italy's history, or whatever you think.
for me, what I feel is like I think that the American empire, so to speak, and it's not an empire, but it feels like it kind of, it's really, for all of us Americans who have a kind of a short memory, it's like all we've ever known, and it's all our grandparents and our great. It's always kind of been like that in remembered memory, at least. And when you study great civilizations and you study their rise and their fall, you realize that all civilizations fall and all great empires fall. And I think that gives you you're much more likely to be like, yeah, I can see how this could all fall apart. I mean, totally fall apart, like to the point where it becomes a third world country. I can see it. I could see how it could happen. I'm not saying that it will,
Yeah.
but I could see how the United States could completely fall. Like when you go to Rome and you look at pictures of how Rome looked, and you see ruins and you imagine, or you use those visual aids to sort of recreate what this amazing palaces looked like and everything, and all of the wealth that they had. And then if you know what Rome was like in the Middle Ages, that's just a great example of how you can go from being so great and so powerful and so untouchable to being a total backwater, because Rome becomes a total backwater in the Middle Ages, and it's not an important place, and it's not really a place that anybody wants to be.
Yeah, it's something I think about in Rome and in other circumstances too. A lot of what you'll see if you go to Rome is you'll see a marble pillar that has been taken from somewhere where it was probably once very grand, and it's been shoved into sort of an average looking wall as a way to like shore up the wall. And I think about that a lot in like the value of possessions that people acquire, that they have, and how over time all of those things degrade in general. And something funny in Rome is that you see like, well, there would have been all this opulence, all this power. And then at one point, like you said, when it becomes a backwater, now the vacuum that's there that was keeping all these monuments in place is no longer there. And the sacredness of those places, or the pomp and circumstance of those places, is now gone. And people are just like using it as if it's materials, And that's, it really does bring it home where you think, like, where is the reverence? You're like, there is no reverence. People are trying to like build houses out of what's here, and nobody's safeguarding it anymore. Everything's open for the taking.
Yeah, it makes sense. Nobody cared. Nobody cared that this was, an ancient temple. It was like, well, we need these columns for something else. So we're going to take them.
Yeah, nobody's here watching the house anymore. So why leave it in one beautiful place, one beautiful state, I guess.
Yeah, so that struck me. And I just thought it would be interesting to sort of play with the idea of the difference between running to somewhere as opposed to running from somewhere. And when those two things collide, and maybe you're doing both at the same time in a I suppose happy coincidence is not apt, but in a coincidental way, you are the place that you always wanted to live, but always thought, well, it's not the time, my kids are young, or it's impractical, suddenly, because of at least what you perceive to be an unstable country or an unstable living situation, is giving you an impetus to go sooner than later.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and she really did want to make that distinction of, it's not just that we're fleeing. Like, I wanted to do this anyway, but because of how I'm feeling about what's going on in the US right now, I'm feeling like, well, why not do it now rather than later? But I wonder, like, why that distinction is so important to her story, in that, what, do you define yourself somehow differently if you're running from something only? Does it add a certain level of, like, hopefulness to say, like, well, I might be trying to leave something, but I'm more going to the thing that I've been wanting to do for a long time?
Yeah, I think it also kind of brings up that old expat versus immigrant conversation that we've had several times on this show
Mm-hmm.
that, we've never really necessarily solved
Right.
answered the question. But when do you go from being an expat to an immigrant, or when do you consider yourself an expat versus an immigrant? And I think that that might be a big part of it. An
Mm-hmm.
immigrant is sort of running from something. They're running from either, political unrest or poverty or disease or crime. And an expat is running to, they're not necessarily being pushed out of their own country, but they are wanting something different,
Mm-hmm.
wanting a different lifestyle or a different, just different scenery, different, it's more
Mm-hmm.
of like I want to choose to live there because I like it there.
Yeah, I
So,
don't know. That's an interesting distinction. I'm not sure if I would put it that way necessarily. Like in some of the ways that we've said the immigrant expat is sometimes intention to stay versus intention to try it
that's
out.
yeah, I think all of those things are part of it. Like I don't think
Mm-hmm.
any one of those things is everything. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Lots of people who have written in to our show have said if you're white, you're an expat. If you're not white, you're an immigrant. And I think that is very reductive.
Yeah, I think
Um,
lots of enough people have written too to be like, not my experience,
yeah,
Yeah, it has been definitely an interesting debate for sure.
yeah. But I thought that that was interesting. It made me sort of pause, and I think that it if you do feel like if you are the sitting there and thinking I really want to get out of this country, like ask yourself, have I ever wanted to live in another place? And if
Prior
the
to
answer
now.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, prior to now, if the answer is a resounding yes, like for me,
Yeah.
I always wanted to move to Europe probably from the first time I ever went there. And I did eventually make it happen relatively quickly, but not instantly. It
Mm-hmm.
definitely took several years of dreaming and scheming. So if it had been me and this had all been happening back in the early 2000s, I would have been like, yeah, I'm going to go right now because I've been wanting to go, just like Jenny. I've been wanting to go, so let me just go.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've never had this thought before and you've never had this desire and there's no place in the world that's really you feel is calling to you, then yeah, maybe think it over because as I'm sure Jenny is finding out, living in a foreign country is really, really hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really, really hard. No matter how much you want to be there and love it there, it's still really, really hard. And especially the first couple of years are really hard.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's not your dream, when you get there, it might feel like, hey, wait a second, maybe I made a mistake.
Uh-huh. I mean, it also, I guess, gives you a reason to think like, if I don't have a dream to go anywhere, then why now? What is happening right now that is freaking me out so much that I need to go also? And I'm sure
Yeah.
that answer is different for everybody. Certainly.
Hmm.
I mean, when you were moving to Rome 20 plus years ago now,
Hmm.
you were at a very different stage of life than Jenny is, and you were older
Hmm.
than her kids are now. You were younger than she is now. Like how much of it were you aware of the politics, the culture of the US and being like, I don't want to be in this culture anymore? Or was it more just being enamored with the culture of somewhere else? Because I think you'd think very differently in your 20s,
Yeah,
than you do.
I did not care. I could not care less about politics and when I was in my 20s.
Yeah, in any country.
Um,
Yeah.
in any country. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can't even remember who was president when I moved.
What
I
year
think it
did you
was
move?
2004. It must have been Bush Jr. Yeah, it was
Mm-hmm.
Bush because I remember when Obama was elected and I was in Rome. I was
Yeah.
living in Rome.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was right before. So it was 2004. It must have been right before Bush was elected for the second time.
Mm-hmm.
Because Obama was elected in 2008. So I'm just
Yep.
doing a little math in my head. But no, I didn't really care. I mean, I had my political opinions, of course, and I did vote.
Mm-hmm.
But I certainly wasn't. I mean, I don't think it made the slightest bit of impact on me as
Yeah.
far as my decision to move. It was, I want to be there. I like it there. I like the language, the people, the lifestyle, the culture, the food, the weather, the clothes, the art, the music. I just liked it all. Like I loved everything about it. I liked how I felt when I was there here.
Uh-huh.
I liked the way that life felt. um,
Mm-hmm.
and I just wanted to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and because you went there so young too, it wasn't like you had made a place for yourself as a young adult in the States at that point. You were just sort of,
Yeah, not really. I mean, I did feel very connected to Boston. I loved Boston. I still love it. I had gone to undergrad there 4 years and I had been very happy during that time. And then I had moved back after grad school, as well as spending the summers there during grad school. But what I lacked there was like a real strong friend group, because so many of my friends had moved away after college. And so, yeah, I didn't really have a community there, and I had no family there, of course. So, in that sense, yeah, you're right. I didn't really have, and I didn't have a career there, like after college, after grad school, I was just sort of temping.
yeah.
So I didn't have a tether. Once my boyfriend and I broke up, then it was really like that was clear. It was like this is the moment because I have nothing holding me back.
Yeah. No job, no nothing. You're ready to go. Well, what did you think of the more relational aspects of Jennie's story?
Well, after she kind of gets into it and explains some of the stuff, it does make sense. I believe her. But before she got that far, and I think especially like when you were telling me the story before I heard from her on the actual interview, I was like, this is a romantic comedy. Like I just felt like this is, one of those lovers to enemies to lovers or whatever, friends to love. I don't know, lovers to friends to enemies to lovers again. I don't know, something like that. And I just thought this is perfect. Like what a great setup for a romantic comedy.
So true. So true.
Because I mean, here you are, you're in a foreign country. Like, what's more romantic than that? Like discovering new things together and making gaffes together, and having to rely on each other for things because you don't have anyone else there. You're pushed together, just like in a romantic comedy. The people are always pushed together. So I was like, yeah, they're definitely going to get back together. Then as I listened to her talk a little bit more, I was like, yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. It sounds like she's definitely done.
Well, I mean, 2 years to find out. In your romantic comedy, I believe she said something like the house is 3 stories, and then when one parent's on, they'll live, whichever parent isn't on will live on the 3rd story.
See, I didn't hear that.
Oh, maybe you
I
didn't hear that. Like, well, I don't know. I could be getting
maybe
that
it was
wrong.
cut out of the interview.
No,
I
it wasn't cut
remember
out.
hearing
Maybe
that.
we just talked about that. But anyway, if that's wrong, Jennie, because I'm sure you're listening, I'm sorry. But I think if I recall what she said, it's a 3-story place because what they've been doing, of course, as a divorced couple, is that you're not on as a parent all the time because one parent has the kids, one does not. And so they were going to try to figure out a way to mimic that in their actual living situation, but they are all sharing a house. So
that's so bizarre.
So in your romantic comedy, then the someone would be sneaking down from the attic, in the middle
or
of the
like
night.
sneaking their girlfriend or boyfriend up without
the back
wanting
stairs.
Yeah, I could totally see so many great scenes happening here and so many misunderstandings too.
So many misunderstandings.
But yeah, that's funny about the being on and being off. So like when you're off, you're just not there. Like a kid wakes up in the night. I guess her kids are not that little, but kids calling for you. You're like, sorry, kid, I'm off the clock.
Go talk to your dad about it. Yeah. It was funny because it sounds like such an odd situation, but at the same point, when I lived in San Francisco, for those of you who've been listening a long time, remember that when I was in San Francisco, and because the rents and things were so high there, I knew a lot of different people who were living in kind of odd situations. I knew a woman who had been divorced for something like, I feel like it was a long time, like 5 years. And her ex-husband was still sleeping on the couch in the middle of the living room because none of them could afford to move out. And so she's like, yeah, it does get sort of tiring to have him basically in the middle of my life all the time because there's not even a bedroom for him because they're no longer sharing a bedroom. So he's just in the living room every day. I knew another couple who got a divorce,
like
and they lived
misery.
in a little house that was subdivided so that they lived on the upper floor, and then they had an apartment in the basement that they were renting out to somebody else. And when they decided that they were going to get a divorce, they had the tenant move out, and then whichever parent was in charge for that week or whatever would be upstairs with their kid, and the other one would be downstairs in the apartment in the basement. And I remember talking to this friend of mine about it, and she said the weirdest thing about it is that I can hear my son talking through the ceiling when I'm in the basement, and I'm not supposed to go upstairs to like intrude on their time together. And she's like, and it's so frustrating and lonely downstairs to be able to like hear them chatting, and I'm just sitting in the basement for some reason because they couldn't afford to move to do two different places, so they had to share the same living facility. So I feel like I know more that these weird situations can work. Whether or not they're ideal is another matter entirely. But yeah, I just what they were attempting to do reminded me of those San Francisco situations. But of course, in a foreign country, which adds a whole other layer, a whole other layer to everything.
Man, yeah, for me also. I just feel like the fact that she was able to convince him, beyond the fact that they're living together, not living together, like the fact that you're like, I really want to move to Ireland with the kids. Would you like just move with? Like,
Let's go.
I'm shocked that he said yes. I don't know this guy, but I'm still shocked because I can't imagine doing it personally. I mean, unless it was someplace I'd really always wanted to go, and then I'd be like, sure, I'm up for it.
Sure, let's go.
But
yeah,
it's got to be pretty rare.
I think so. I think part of it is that they do get along as friends pretty well. So I could see it being in that regard, being like, how about a 2-year adventure like with our kids? And I think that he also felt like he was at a very transitionary time at work, and so I think she caught him also at a great moment where it was sort of like, work-wise, I'm thinking I'm going to be transitioning from one thing to another. And she's like, rather than figuring all that out, why don't we go to Ireland, So I think it was also lucky time. I mean, probably not lucky, planned timing on her part, but like, that she saw the opportunity there that maybe he would be ready for something different. But it is interesting that he would agree to go. I totally agree. Or that if it was reversed, if she would agree to go, it is an unusual thing to be like, we've spent the last few years dividing our lives. What if we put them back together again and move to a foreign country? Not together, but together for the journey, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I'm dying to find out how it's working out. I really am. Because by this time, like, obviously we recorded that interview before they left town. As you and I are talking now, they've probably been gone for like a month, maybe. Mm-hmm. And their kids most certainly have started school. Life there is underway at this point, and I'm just dying to know how it's going. Has it been, does it feel like home at all yet? I mean, can you feel like it's home in a month? I mean, I guess if you visited there a lot, you could feel like I'm starting to get it in a month for certain, but I don't know. What do you think?
So I think so, especially if you have some kind of like rhythm to get into, like with school, like, your kids going off to school and picking them up and dropping them off and doing the same thing every day. I think, going to your local shop or whatever. Mm-hmm. I tend to feel at home in places very quickly when I'm in a situation like that.
Well, I mean, we're certainly going to have her back. I probably will give her like a good 6 months. What do you think? What's a good timeline to check in? Should we check in a year later? Like, what do you want?
I would go 3 months.
3 months. Okay.
Yeah.
Like try to catch it when it's still tough.
Yeah. Well, 3 months it's long enough that like that first blush of novelty is worn off. But it's still new. You're still discovering, and you're still exploring, and you're definitely not 100% settled in. Mm-hmm. I'd go 3 months.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll aim for 3 months, and we'll find out how's it all going. I tried to get her husband to talk on that last episode, and he's like, I'm sure she's described it fine. So maybe he'll come on a future episode. We'll see. We'll see. All right. Well, we will leave it there. If you have any thoughts, please feel free to write. I know that a couple people weighed in on Instagram saying that they also had left the United States for political reasons. one who wrote us as far back as 2018, so prior to the pandemic. So it is interesting to me that this is a thing that's happening. And so, yeah, feel free to weigh in with further comments if you have them. You can always reach us by email, bittersweetlifepodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us at our website, thebittersweetlife.net. Or, Tiffany's doing some pretty interesting things over on the Instagram.
I am. I'm trying.
Hypothetically.
I'm trying. I'm not very consistent, but I try.
Yes. Yes. And we do sometimes post some fun reports. Like if you were on our Instagram last week and last year, I guess there was some good stuff back then too. You would have seen Tiffany sharing the piles and piles of homework that her son Aurelio had to complete during his summer quote unquote vacation, which was super fun to look at. And of course, you heard her talk about that last week during our mini episode. But sometimes it's like a good peek into the actual life of Italy. And of course, as you're hearing this, in a couple weeks, we're going to actually be in Rome. So we should be filming some pretty fun Rome content also. I mean, I'm going to be in Rome. Tiffany's always in Rome. But our Roman tour is coming right up at the very beginning of October. So we should have some pretty fun stuff happening then, too. So look for the Bittersweet Life podcast there, and you'll find us. And until next time, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katie Sewell.
I'm Tiffany Parks.
Join us again. Bye.